Questions have been raised about the future of the investigation into the Steinhoff Saga. Author and multi-award-winning journalist Rob Rose says the Hawks will now have to reconsider who to hold accountable. Now, this comes after former Steinhoff CEO Markus Jooste died by suicide. It's understood the disgraced businessman shot himself in the head yesterday. Just a day prior, Jooste was fined 475 million rand by the Financial Sector Conduct Authority for misrepresenting Steinhoff's financial statements published between the year 2014 and 2017. The FSCA says Jooste earned millions of rands in performance bonus based on deceptive statements. The action also destroyed billions of rand in Steinhoff market value, both on the JSE and in Frankfurt. Rose says the public expects accountability. All right, in another development, a former top executive, Stephan Grobler, the former head of the legal affairs at Steinhoff, has handed himself over to police. He appeared in court in Pretoria this morning on charges of fraud and racketeering. Grobler handed himself over to police a day after Jooste's death. All right, let's get some reaction now. We speak to, of course, Trent Murray, our correspondent, who is currently in Germany. Trent, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, you've also been covering this particular case extensively. We know, of course, last year, a German court issued an arrest warrant for Markus Jooste, who is the former executive officer of, the scandal-ridden Steinhoff. Of course, now news of his death by suicide. What's the reaction been?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think like everyone in South Africa, people here in Germany as well are just incredibly shocked by this news. I mean, it is being covered quite extensively across all of the major German media outlets, many of them, in fact, citing SABC News as their sources on the ground around the circumstances surrounding Mr. Jooste's death. And we have to remember, of course, the reason the Germans are interested in this story is because of the crucial fact that Steinhoff was listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. And because of that, when those financial scandals took place at the company and there were accusations of balance sheet manipulation, well, that garnered the interest of German investigators right up to the point, as you mentioned, that Markus Jooste was expected in court in Oldenburg here in Germany. Now, of course, we quite famously remember covering that case last year. It was the summer of last year, European time, and he didn't show up at the trial, angering the judge at the time and pushing prosecutors to then start that process for an arrest warrant and an extradition order from South Africa. So look, we know Mr. Jooste was an executive under incredible financial pressure, not just that 475 million rand fine which was issued in recent days, but also incredible legal pressure, not just in SA but here in Germany. And I think for the prosecutors here, they will really, like everyone, will be digesting the news around the death of Mr. Jooste and what happens next in terms of that quite high profile court case they were preparing.
I mean, this development does come, of course, as a number of entities were closing in on Mr. Jooste. And of course, we also heard that he was facing quite a hefty fine. A lot of questions, as you also say, are, in terms of what are the next steps in as far as accountability is concerned. As you've heard in my previous report, one other person is now also been arrested and is appearing in court, which is a first in this matter in South Africa. Just in terms of next steps, we know, of course, the regional court, as you said, in Oldenburg was pursuing him quite aggressively. In terms of next steps, in terms of who to hold accountable, any news of that?
Yeah, well, they were pursuing him aggressively because there was a legal argument over why Mr. Jooste didn't appear in court when he was due. Now, at the time, his defence lawyer here argued there was an agreement between him and the police in South Africa that didn't allow him to leave the country. And in fact, they even argued that his passport had been taken by the Hawks. Now, at the time, I remember working quite closely with Sophie Makwena, of course, SABC News' foreign editor, and she made some calls to sources in SA, and the Hawks said that they never took his passport, which raised even more questions as to, again, why he didn't come. Now, we should just remember it wasn't just Mr. Jooste who was facing legal cases here. In fact, last year, Dirk Schreiber, who is the European finance chief, he was sentenced to 3.5 years prison here in Germany for his role in the scandal. It was the first time, actually, a Steinhoff executive was given prison time since the scandal first broke several years ago. And Sigmar Schmidt, another executive in the European arm of the company, was also handed a 2-year suspended sentence. So I think in many ways, Mr. Jooste was sort of looking at what was happening here. Some of his former colleagues at Steinhoff starting to be given prison sentences and perhaps, questioning whether that would be something he would be looking at if that extradition order indeed was approved. I guess we will never know, of course, now, but certainly the German legal prosecutors were going after several executives based on what they believed were their involvement in the scandal. We'll have to just wait and see now, I guess, where the case goes from here. Again, I think given that this is just breaking overnight, many legal teams, both in the defence side but also the prosecution side, will be trying to chart next steps.